Welcome back everybody online here in the room. I hope you had a nice lunch. It was a bit improvised, but Warpstock is always improvisation. A quick update from my side. Things have been a bit slow again due to health issues, but I won't wander off into that direction. So you've seen the browser update. Dimitri's still waiting for his working permit in the US. Once that gets done, he can start working again. He did some work earlier, but that was when he was still in Europe. So what about Warpstock Europe 2027? Yes, I'm already thinking about it. I don't know if you were on CC as well from the plans that came from Oliver Stein, no, it was Oliver Mark, who used to work for IBM. There maybe is gonna be something done in Germany regarding a 40-year anniversary of OS2, but it's still, and it's planned maybe at IBM, but I still don't know the details, and I don't know if I'm going to synchronize Warpstock with it, because it's maybe then in the direction of Stuttgart, which is not next door for everybody. So I have no plans yet. If I am gonna do a Warpstock, I'm not gonna do it in June again, because I just decapitated about a third of my audience because people have vacation plans. So next year it's probably gonna be in May again. Last year I demonstrated a bit too enthusiastically the GCC factory, warp-in and RPM packages. I've had some feedback about your CWMM package, Greg. People love it. Martin Iterbide now installs it by the default thing because it's just a press of a button. So I'm still looking for more people to help. If there are people online that would like to help. The reason that Warp-in got the ability to do dependency checking for RPM is very simple. It makes it easier to build packages, and you're no longer stuck with the USR directory structure. We only support ArcOS 5.1.11 or 12 or higher because there's simply not enough manpower to test it on all the versions of ECS or OS2. So if you want to run it, be my guest, but it's unsupported. I also don't read all of the forums because there are so many posting and long threads that it's not always easy to keep up. If you have a browser, just visit rpmos2voice.org and there's a manual there on how to set it up. Greg has already got his package out for over a year. I still need to check the downloads. Yes? Oh, wait, microphone.
Can we have this rpmos2voice.org like the experimental NetLabs RPM server, which is just...
it's already got an experimental directory.
No, I mean, just as easy to install like NetLabs experimental as additional repository in AMPM.
It works in the same way. Wait, I'll get to that.
Okay.
Here, just give me. One of the packages last year that didn't work, but that proves how it works, is the tame install package. So the same software for the scanner lives on rpmnetlabs.org, and the old PM sane front end, the tame front end, which is a graphical user interface, has been split off. Now there's just a package and you can download it and install it. If the package gets updated, it will automatically fetch the updates. So just to break out of this, one of the ways how it installs so here, for example, you have in the games folder, so you have open transport icon, puts the icon there. Wait, I can try and run this and see if it fits into the window. Maybe the resolution isn't good. So everything with the SDL dependencies that it needs and libc is all checked, and it also puts it in a directory where you want it. So in this case, it's put into D programs open TTD. Is it loading? I played the game. Oh, there it goes. Here. Okay. That's how it's supposed to work. Just install, get an icon in there, and that's it. So if you want, Greg, we can add your FM2 to the directory, to the RPM repository for Warp-in packages. If it's then updated, then people can just download it and Arcano Package Manager will detect it for you. So how do you add a repository? Sorry for the small screenshot, but if you go here to Manage, you can then add a repository and you just fill in the URL and give it a name. That's all there's to it. If you go to rpmos2voice.org, you can see the repositories that are there.
Can you go back and explain what we're looking at?
Wait, I'll try and show it with Arcano Package Manager. The only thing you have to do to add a repository in Arcano Package Manager is to go to the Package Manager itself. Yeah, there's no internet connection right now, so how can I? If you go here to the menu option Manage, oh, yeah, I think it's now, because there's no internet connection. Here you can go to repositories. And in this menu, there's a menu option repository and you can add a yum or a warp-in repository. So if I just want to add a warp-in repository, I just give it a name test, give it a description test, and then put here the URL to it and save it, and then it will pop up. So since I haven't got an internet connection, but it should, when you have an internet connection, it will fetch from the RPM from the Warp-in directory, it will fetch all of the present packages. And it will also keep track of them if they're updated. So you in Arcano Package Manager, just go to Manage, Repositories, and then here under Repository you click on Add. And you can also here just enable or disable a repository if it isn't working.
So you're adding a Warp-in package to the package manager?
No, we're telling the package manager where it can find a repository on the internet with all of the files that are present. I can just...
So you have to give it a URL where the actual file is located?
Yes.
Okay.
So in the case of the... Oh, I don't have internet here, sorry.
So in theory, you would upload So in theory, you would upload the WPI file to, say, Hobbs?
No, it has to be uploaded to the repository.
To the repository?
Yes.
Okay.
And you can browse it in two ways. You can do it with the web browser, but the benefit by adding the Arcano to the Arcano Package Manager is that next time that Greg's CWMM multimedia package gets updated, Arcano Package Manager will automatically pick up on it, and then you can choose to install that update.
Okay.
And that's why for years we've been trying to come up with this, so that people can actually just install software and not have to look in Hobbe's archive if there is an update from Co for his M player, for example. That's why you want to have this. And I'm hoping maybe that that this can end up in Arca OS by default, so that you can just install it via the menu once you're online.
Okay.
So why do you need a URL?
That's where the index is.
There's an index file. If you go to rpmos2voice.org/repository/warpin/release, there is a small index file that tells the package manager which files are there. As I said, you can download it via a browser, but then you don't keep, then Arch Noah Package Manager is not aware of it that it is installed.
But I still don't understand why you need a URL if you're loading it into an area in the repository.
No, I mean, a developer can upload a file,
Yeah,
and for the end users, they need to use a URL to connect to the repository.
okay.
And then still, the original question remains, because you can install like this NetLabs experimental by entering a URL, completely manual, like you did yet in this example. But there's also a package for NetLabs experimental, and then installing this package installs NetLabs experimental as a repository.
Yeah.
These two things would be really nice because it's easy for end users to just install such a package, and by that way entering all the required things into the repository for the repository, and then they can use it.
Sorry I'm so slow here, but if I create this new ambitious package that I want to package up as a warp-in, but I want to appear in the package manager, where does that .wpi file end up? Where do I upload it to?
You can ask me to give you an upload account for it. And then when you've uploaded, I'll simply move it to experimental so that people can start testing it.
So I email it to Roderick?
No, you upload it.
I upload it to Roderick?
No, it is, if you go to, you can ask me to get an account for rpmos2voice.org/upload, and then you can directly upload it and send me an email that you have uploaded it.
Okay.
And then I can move it to the experimental directory.
Okay, so you give me the special location that I then upload the file to.
Yes.
Okay.
Now there's one thing that I'm trying to prevent, because there are some people that want to create packages for it, but I don't want to overload it with every batch file and script and everything to turn it into a dump file where it's just an endless amount of files in there. So that's why I came up with stuff like Open Transport, the scanner, the CWM package. Nobody needs 10 different packages for multimedia. The user just wants to have a click and run option, and then you can always select what you don't want to install. So I'm perfectly open and willing to get more software in there, such as FM2 or maybe BlueCat to repackage it. There's also Embellish in here, and that's software that can be repackaged so that you can install it with a click of a button. You had a question, Glenn?
Well, I was going to make a comment. So this goes back to something I mentioned during my presentation, where a lot of us are used to installing things in a one-off. We've been doing it for a long time, where we understand the process to get this installed. We need all of these packages. What we're doing here is we're taking that, all of those packages are still required, they're still needed. We're taking them out of the picture, where the repository says, here's the latest version of this package, here is the latest version of the sub-packages. It's one click, so people don't have to think about it. And I've been doing that using the Microsoft side of things for decades.
Yeah, that's why, that's fine.
No, it's a great idea. I just didn't understand how the mechanics worked.
Yeah, there's also a mailing list called the GCC Factory where all developers are on. And if there are questions, they can ask those questions there. Although I sent an email recently and it failed again, despite having proper day key IM records for spam. But that's why I'm trying to get everybody together. And some people were, I think Greg was skeptical about that MMOS2 file, creating it. Or it was somebody else maybe. But it does the job. And I said, Martin Iterbeat already likes it. He now installs it on each VM because it now just adds all of the multimedia capabilities to OS2 as it should be. So
That's okay. My primary takeaway from this is email you.
that's correct.
Case of problems,
Yeah.
Roderick. Always.
Which I'm perfectly fine with.
So I don't know if I mentioned it last year, but Greg created it, but I'd like to put it in the spotlight. It's not perfect, but we're stuck with the current version of Thunderbird, which is getting old. It's about 10 years old since it was. Dave Vio made some updates maybe to it, but it's getting old to the tooth. So we have a new Qt5 mail program, and if you look here, there should be a Trojita folder. This is, by the way, an RPM package, which also lives on rpm-os2voice.org, but then in the separate RPM repository. So now, I hope it's not, again, I don't have internet on it, but
That helps.
so with this one, you can at least get an alternative for for Thunderbird, and that's also in the repository. Let's see here. Now, the other thing that people have been asking about is, what about the new browser? Can I get something newer than the Qt5 build that is available on NetLab? So it was released in 2022. There is a new RPM, a new Warpin package that Jan-Erik Larka created with Double 6.2, which is more up to date. And some people, there are mixed reports about it, but you can find that on rpm-os2voice.org /repo/warpin/experimental. Let's see here, where was I? Yes, here. No, but it's also all in the slides. We'll make the slides available. We'll make the slides available on the website after Warpstock. So the new beta beta for Double is not supported. It's as is, but you can install it, and once we release again a new update for the Double 6.2 Warpin, then you can update it, and you don't have to futz around with all of the different DLL dependencies and zip files. You can go to OS2 World and read for yourself what a journey it is to get it installed. This is just a one-click installation, and it makes an icon for Double 6.2. It's recommended that you have the latest ACPI and keep the virtual address limit to 2048. And there was one user on OS2.org that liked it. I forgot who it was. So if people are interested how to build Warpin packages with dependency checking, I don't have a toolkit for it, but you can get the toolkit yourself. Warpin has an executable called WIC, W-I-C. And on the command line, you can take a Warpin package from rpm-os2voice.org /warpin/release, and then just type WIC with -x capital and another minus smaller case x, and then the Warpin name. Then it extracts everything that's in there, and then you can see the WIS file and any CMD scripts that are loaded. And then you can see how the Warpin package was created, and you can use that as your own basis to create your own Warpin packages. Then you can test them, then you can upload them to experimental, and then we move that to the experimental directory, and then other people can test that. Go ahead.
You go back 2 slides because I'm slow.
This one? About Trojita? Or
How
was
do
it
you,
about
how
the
do you
browser?
say that? Torjica. And that is a update to Thunderbird?
No.
It's a different IMAP.
Can you give the microphone to Greg, please?
It's an IMAP mail program that was actually done as a project by a Russian developer and is open sourced and sort of being developed.
So it's an alternative.
Right, it's an alternative. It is, and it works okay. And I will admit I don't use it regularly because I use PM Mail, and I still have a pop server that works.
Well, yeah, one person asked, this thing doesn't support PopMill, it only supports IMAP, so. Okay. Keith.
That information, ChatGPT will generate WPI files.
Warpin files?
Yep.
Okay.
It says it does. I haven't yet checked it.
You get to specify what goes in it.
No.
Does it work? It's a surprise package.
But I'll come back to that on my presentation.
Yeah. A quick warning, if you're using the Double browser and you're getting blank pages, in some cases Double crashes and then it corrupts the local file cache. Go to your home directory and there's a .double directory. Just delete it and then you'll see that the blank pages will go away, and otherwise you will just keep. So I had it with going to youtube.com that it would load and then it would just present a blank page. You just need to delete the .double directory in the home directory and then it loads again. Is that okay for you? Okay. So,
I'll try and keep up.
so if you want to create Warpin packages yourself with dependency checking from rpmnetlabs.org, you can get it. You can get any of these packages at rpmhost2voice.org/warpin/release. As I said, you can download both with the browser or with the package with the Arcano package manager. If you download it yourself, you can just put it in a directory, and then in the Warpin directory on your system, you can find wik.exe, and that you can use to extract it. So basically what the developer has done to build the Warpin package, you can untangle that and make it in human readable format with the wik command on the command line. Well, there's a time of coming and a time of going. Give a round of applause to Keith because he's been keeping the books clean. Well, they are clean, but he's been no, go ahead.
I just bought a new computer.
Yeah. Oh, that's where the money went now.
They're very clean.
There's nothing left.
But he will remain active as a voice board, and Tom Heijten for the next 2 years has volunteered to act as a acting treasurer for the time being. Interim, yes. The problem is, for any volunteer, I need a Dutch citizen because we've got a Dutch ING bank account. The reason that we've got 2 people that can sign for the bank accounts because in Canada the bank account was still registered only to 1 person. And as we are all reaching respectable ages, it's handy to have a backup if everybody knows what I mean. I hope you're still with us for a long time, but that's what you also said. Keith is now 80, so that's why I decided to look for an alternative. But he'll still be a voice board. Thank you, Keith.
Thank you.
So, are there any questions?
I'm 80.
18? That's young.
I'm 18 with 62 years of experience.
Oh. Are there any questions before we move on to the next presentation? As I said, I'm still hoping to get more people to build me Warpin packages for stuff that they find interesting. I can't do it alone. Jan-Erik Larker has been doing this single-handedly, so don't tell me that it can't be done. We've proven that it works and it adds some value. So, okay, when is the next?
Comment to the Double browser.
Oh.
Instead of completely wiping out a Double directory, probably if you start with a fresh install and do some configuration things in Double, and then close Double, and you put those files inside the Double directory
that's
away, so
possible.
it's easier to have the basic configuration up again after where you have to wipe.
That's possible. That's usual. I'm just telling that the first thing. Okay, thank you. But yeah, I hope that we can fix that with a new Double build because that also happens with the old Double that's currently on NetLabs. So, are there any other questions? Okay, thank you for your time and enjoy the rest of Warpstock.
Three, two, one. Okay. Okay. I'd like to talk to you about using AI to develop OS2 software. AIs.
Presentation or did AI?
I made it. I am a sort of AI nowadays. This presentation is basically about ChatGPT and how I've used it. Some cons, pros, and some hints. So first, how have I used AI? I've used it to help with compiler errors. So often as not, you get a compiler error if you've been doing stuff and you don't understand why, or you don't know how to get rid of it. Sorry, I'm moving around too much? Okay. To find a specific API, there's a lot of information everywhere, and if you look through the help files, before you eventually find what you're looking for, you're about a couple of hours later. And then you forget where you were the first time anyway. You forget, what was I looking for? I've also used it with specific APIs. How and what does the API do? The options are not always obvious or well documented. I've been using this GPT for my current project, which is a local cloud, which I'll be talking about later, and it seems to work. I've used it to assist or provide a method to a particular programming problem, to give me a solution and see what happens. Which AI? Because there are more than one. Which one is the best? Well, now I used AI to ask which one was the best. If you ask Google, it says, well, for OS 2, Claude or Sonnet and Gemini. That's what Google says. If you ask ChatGPT, it says ChatGPT. Really strange, isn't it? You take your pick. I've been using ChatGPT. It seems to work for me quite well. And you heard also from this morning from Dimitri, he seems to like that as well. If you ask which is the best AI for Arca OS or for porting, you get ChatGPT for C code generation. In fact, almost everything. And this seems to be true. Why? It will also tell you why ChatGPT is good for OS 2. It's great, isn't it? You can ask it, you don't have to do anything yourself, which is not quite true. Classic C, that's agreed. This, you know, are all the various things that you need as a programmer for PM programming, Classic C. And I learned there are some quirks in OpenWhatCom. Can't remember quite what they were, but oh yes, there's one big difference between OpenWhatCom and VCC, is apparently OpenWhatCom puts a lot of stuff via registers, whereas other compilers put them in the stack. Whether this is quicker, I don't know, but it can be a problem with debugging, because instead of stuff going to the stack, it goes into a register. What do you use to compile?
VCC.
Okay.
OpenWhatCom, GCC.
Greg, what do you use?
I use OpenWhatCom.
Okay.
I use Visual Age. I use GCC. Basically, I use whatever the program was originally written for.
Okay. Have you debugged in Whatcom?
Yes.
And did you run into the problems with register usage?
Not really.
Okay. I haven't used, well, I have used OpenWhatCom once or twice, but I can't remember. It didn't give me any problems, but that says nothing. Portability and the tool chains. All this is what you need when you're doing programming or porting. You need to have the complete set. GPT models are pretty good at understanding legacy code. OS 2 is generally legacy code. Translating APIs, generating compatibility shims. We talked about shims earlier. And explaining obscure compiler errors. Sometimes my errors aren't so obscure, but give the microphone.
Translating APIs, which APIs are made from Linux to?
Well, it can be from use. Well, one of the problems which I'll come on to later is which API are you talking about? Are you talking about an OS2 API? Are you talking about a Windows API? But nevertheless, there are a lot of APIs. I can never remember the standard ones, let alone some of the more obscure ones, and you don't know what they do, how you use them. I mean, just look through the help files of VCC and you look at all the APIs and you just forget everything. So it does help you because you can ask for a particular function, it tells you the API or a number of APIs, and you then sort out which one is the best one. Apparently, I say apparently because how can you check how good an AI is? It says it's pretty good. It says the best workflow, ChatGPT, large code snippets, full header files. So you can use all this to make your porting from a particular program.
You're using this as feeding the ChatGPT?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's very clear understand.
This is what the recommended stack or prompts, if you like, for development with ChatGPT. Sorry, this is not the prompts. This is what it generally thinks is best. So if you're asking for general coding, ChatGPT, legacy is Claude, that's another AI, and so on and so forth. You use various things. This is what he thinks is the best method when using AI. I don't know if anybody knows, but last week apparently Claude had a big problem in the States because it was not available for a long time. And a lot of the chatbots, if you like, rely on Claude, and they didn't work. So people were ringing up and getting no answer at all. Availability is always a problem. Okay, let's have a look at the weaknesses. This is what I've discovered. Providing a problem to ChatGPT doesn't work always well. So you ask it for something and it doesn't give you what you expect.
So, have you tried providing the problem in asking the same question in different ways?
Yes,
Okay,
but I
interesting.
come on to that. One of the big problems I ran up against was you get a piece of code and it says, this is what you should do. You use this API, and it turns out to be a Windows API. For example, I don't know how many of you use code. If you're doing a list box, for example, one of the codes or one of the APIs is select item. So when you have a list box and you want to select one of the items there, you use the code LM select item. But sometimes ChatGPT say you should use LM select selection, which is a Windows API. And it's not always obvious. And you go and compile, and the compiler begins to give errors. It does not happy. I don't know this. Also, I've run up against a problem with variables. In an include statement, I forget exactly which one it was, but it gave me a variable, and the compiler says, I don't know it. So I went through my header files trying to find it, and maybe I hadn't included it in the header file. And I found that the variable was there, but if you read it in English, you say it's not spelt correctly. You know, it's a sort of half abbreviation. And ChatGPT had done some spelling correction on the variable. It's these little things which can be most frustrating because you needed this variable, but you couldn't get it. The other problem, of course, is when you make a subroutine, it has no information on what subroutines you already have. So if you define a problem which says, okay, for example, check if a file is present, you might already have a simple subroutine which just looks to see if a file is present. ChatGPT will give you a solution and it makes its own subroutine. So you have multiple subroutines for the same thing or similar things. That is a problem.
So, comment, not a question, but, so we've used, referencing the bottom 3 comments.
Yeah.
I've seen the same thing in Copilot.
Yeah, possible.
Okay, and
yeah.
that seems to be a weakness across using the AIs in certain situations.
Agreed. The problem is, how much information do you give the AI to start with? Do you say, these are all my subroutines? You don't, because it's too massive.
Right.
That's the problem with ChatGPT. Now my problems. Because I have a problem as well. I assume that ChatGPT learns from previous mistakes. So when I've had a routine, for example, it says you do this, this, and this, and it doesn't work, and I say, yes, but you've used a Windows API here. And it will then say, yes, you're very right. Good catch. It's very accommodating to you. So it gives you the new one. Day later, I ask more or less the same question. It gives me the first answer back again. And I say, you don't learn. So it doesn't always learn. Sometimes it appears to. It's strange. Or it's not only session related. I have found, and I've asked ChatGPT itself, why do you do this? And it says, well, I don't really learn. It has information from previous chats, and sometimes it appears to use them. So I assume it remembers errors that I have previously pointed out. Huh? It's like a woman. It doesn't always remember. No, women remember, but they never, no, they forgive but never forget. That's the difference. And when this happens, I get a bit annoyed. Think, Jesus Christ, I just told you, you know. But it's not a person I'm talking to. But you get that sort of communication because it talks to you as if it's a person. What is even worse, if I get a bit of code and I have to re-enter that code because there was something wrong, and I say, what do we have to do with this code? He says, you made a mistake. I said, I didn't make a mistake. You gave me this code. You know, it's not a person. So it is in that respect sometimes difficult when using it to realize it's just like reading a book. So I'm not dealing with a person. These are my weaknesses, but this combines in the usage of AI. You have to realize this. About ChatGPT in general, you can use it as an anonymous, so you just use ChatGPT without anything else. It doesn't remember anything, no sessions, but it has disadvantages. The biggest difference is persistence. So it doesn't know what you did before. Personalization, so it knows what you're talking about. Feature access, well, it's a difference, but I don't really use it. So using ChatGPT, what a name, huh? Before logging in, you only get temporary chats. So no memory, no persistence, no saved history, no syncing across devices. So if you log in on one machine or another machine, It's completely different for ChatGPT. And there's limited access. Exactly how limited, it won't tell me. Stricter usage limits, but again, I can't find out exactly what the usage limits are. It doesn't tell you when you ask, it just says stricter. No memory or personalization. These are the biggest things. And a disadvantage, you've had a conversation, you haven't noted all the information, and it's forgotten, disappears when the session ends. However, if you're logged in, it saves chat history, so you can look back. Because my memory is not as good as it used to be. It was ever good. So you have persistence, multi-session. You can use it and look back, what was that solution? Because sometimes you get multiple solutions, and maybe an earlier solution was the better solution. You can look through past chats, you can search them to find things back. And you get cross-synchronization on different devices, which is handy because sometimes I log in here, sometimes I log in there. You get project continuity. For OS2 and ArcOS and Arca, this is a major advantage. It means you can continue debugging the next day, for example. So you've been doing some work, next day you can go back to the ChatGPT, see what you were doing, or where was I exactly, you know how that works. So it's handy, very handy. I use the free logged in method. So I don't pay anything. I'm half Dutch in that respect. The ChatGPT screen looks like this, which you can't see from there, I'm afraid, but basically, here start all my projects that I've done, so I can select one, look back, and what he starts is a little line that says, what's on your mind today? What do you want to do? That's what it looks like. Now, you may have heard of prompting. Basically, you need to tell the AI, you need to give it a frame of reference. If you don't, you'll get problems. So, first, give a reference and then ask for a problem to be solved. Here are some suggested prompts which I use. For example, you tell him, I'm an experienced OS2 programmer. You tell him what the target platform is. ArcOS. It knows ArcOS, funny enough. If you ask it, it will tell you, I know ArcOS. Are you using 32-bit APIs? Which you normally are, but define it. Is this a PM program, or is it a VO program, or both? And what is very important, tell him no no Win32 APIs, no Windows stuff, no Linux. So you try to make what you're asking for very clear. You can specify which compiler you're using because it will help you with makefiles and so on and so forth. I was just checking on your motorbike. It's still there. This setup avoids most hallucinations. Within AI, we talk about hallucinations, the way he just thinks something up and tells you, and he can do it in such a way, it sounds very plausible. But it's completely a figment of its imagination. Once you've done your prompts, then you can ask about the problem you have to get a solution to that. One problem. ChatGPT does not run on Firefox in Arca OS. Problem with Firefox, as we all know, certain things don't work. Funny enough, if you run it under VirtualBox, it does work. I haven't tried any of these strange websites which we have problems with Firefox under Arca on the VirtualBox. Maybe they will work. But yeah, when you've got VirtualBox, what's the problem? I mean, you're running under a host system that will give you correct websites anyway. I have to run ChatGPT, therefore, under Windows. This gives a small problem. It means the results I get, I have to copy to a file, then run OS2 and check. I do this on a second machine because I like to work on bare metal. And it's a lot quicker generally. So I then run on the second machine the solution. If it's a C program, does it compile? Do I get errors? But it's a bit slow. I then have to copy errors back to the Windows machine and say, this is what's wrong. It's not efficient at all, but it works. And I get long-term debugging in this way. Restarting the chat, as I say, can be tedious.
Because of the history?
Sorry, can you get the microphone?
Is that because of the history you had in the chat?
It's because you're going back and forth between two PCs. So you say this was wrong, and you put that on the Windows machine. You say, chat, this was wrong. He says, well, you try this. Okay, I copy this, I go back. It's tedious in that respect. It's not just, you were wrong, oh, this is the right answer, and we go further. It can be quite an iterative process. So, after presenting the prompts to the AI, the next thing to do is ask the question that you need. And in my case, it's a programming question. And you have to try and specify it as well as possible. Example. This I presented to ChatGPT. I said, create a subroutine in C that takes a date and time, the name of the program, and if the date and time is later, calculate the difference in milliseconds, so from now and the time specified, put that in a 32-bit timer, and if it doesn't fit, there's an overflow, start the calculation, start a countdown. If it doesn't, restart the procedure. Now, to me, this sounded quite explicit. The trouble is, when you're defining a program, it's very, very difficult to define it correctly. What I have in my head, when I'm programming, I program around what's in my head. But the definition isn't quite the same. And as any human being knows, when you're doing something, you take other information that you haven't said. For example, in discussions with my wife, she will say something. She says, but you know, we were talking about this. We've all had that sort of discussion, and you realize you've got half of the information. So, this was the previous example. I asked ChatGPT, what don't you understand? Yeah, just as cross-check validity. He said, well, date and time is not defined. I said, date and time is not defined. A date, time, it's defined, isn't it? Source of current date and time, where did he get that from? Yeah. To me, he takes it from the computer clock, right? But I didn't say that. Difference. Is it a signed or unsigned number? This, you know, it sounds so easy. Take the difference. To me, it's plus and minus, right? But I have to tell him it's a signed or an unsigned number. He says, what happens if this time is earlier than the current time? To my point of view is I'm looking only into the future, but I didn't tell him that. A 32-bit ambiguity, again, because he doesn't know if it's signed or unsigned. And in programming, a 32-bit signed number is different from an unsigned number. An unsigned number is twice as big. It's so obvious to us that do it, but if you don't tell him, he thinks you're crazy. So, apparently not so succinct. He also says, unflow handling is unclear. Restart the subroutine is vague. To me, I thought I'd done it very well. To me, it was obvious what I wanted. To the AI, it's not. So in other words, it can be quite difficult to define a routine correctly so you get the correct result.
You could argue that he's taking all the edge cases for you, so you don't fall into that trap.
Correct. There's obviously he will sometimes ask, do you want error checking? Now, automatically you might say yes, but that's only necessary if the error was not earlier checked, that it, for example, can only be a positive number. But he doesn't know that because you haven't told him. One of the advantages with ChatGPT is when you give him a particular problem, he will often not summarize what you've asked. And this is handy because you can then read back what he's telling you what you've said. And that can sometimes be soul destroying. You think it was so obvious, but no, indeed. So, for example, he will say, is it this? You want error checking? And so on. So you can get back all the information about what your question was and modify it so that you'll get a good answer. So it's very important to ask, for example, is it clear what I want? This was the other one, restart from where, recalculate, all the questions he's asking, wait, maximum, so on, and he will tell you what in fact could go wrong. Does the call recursively call itself? You can feel the problems that are coming. Stack growth, infinite recursions. It will tell you this, so you can use it to analyze what you've asked and to correct your question to the AI. And it's most important you give it exactly what you want. Okay. He says, we just had this one. Okay. So After a while, I decided, let's check how good ChatGPT is. I've used it for simple routines, and it seems to work. Some of the more complex ones, you have to repeat, or should I say, start with a small question and expand it. So I thought, how about ChatGPT writing a complete program from start to finish? My question was, create a PM program that shows a simple calculator with keys 0 to 9. I'm defining now the number of keys, 0 to 9. And a result window that can add, subtract, multiply, and divide. Yeah? Sounds good? What do you think I got?
Hello world.
Hello world, no. The result was surprisingly good. A program that compiled without errors, although there was a small tweak to run it. It used the window creation for each button. Now, for those people who understand programming, you can, as always, you can do things in more ways than one. The normal situation would be to use a resource file, define the keys there, and it's easy. He decided that he would use a window creation for each button, which is what also happens in a resource file, but slightly differently. For a resource file, it's simple. You say, this is what I want, do it. But if you do it, create a window, create window 0, create window 1. At this position, create. It's not the normal way you would do it, but it can be done. It also created a clear key. I hadn't asked. But if you think about it, you need to have a clear key on a calculator, right? So I was pleasantly surprised. As I said, it did not use any resources or resource file. A little bit strange for a PM program, but it's possible. As I say, I would have probably programmed it differently. But then so would somebody else. Everybody does it in their own way. Okay. This is the result. Looks pretty good, doesn't it?
Looks like a copy.
It even calculates correctly. Now, you don't know what the calculation was, but it was correct. So, what's the problem? Does anybody see a problem there? Does anybody see a problem here? If you can see the screen.
Are the dialogues not screwed up those lines, or are they?
No repainting.
Oh.
We've all had that problem. Sometimes something over another thing, it's not repainted. It's what you do see is, because every key is a window, that is repainted, but the background isn't. So, simple enough, add a repaint as necessary. And this is where the advantage of a dialogue comes in. If you have a dialogue, that automatically does repainting for most stuff. So, what have I learned? What have you learned? I'll tell you what I've learned. Define the question as succinctly as possible. Build a routine in multiple steps, so you build it up and you can check each step. If necessary, propose what you think is a better solution, because he comes up with all sorts of solutions, but sometimes you think, isn't that easier? And if you say, why not use this or that, he will say, good idea. He always thinks your ideas are great. That's the positive thing about ChatGPT. You're the only good person around, you know. And test step for step. Because maybe what you had asked was not really defined properly. I had a particular example in my program, which basically was for a backup, for example. You say backup weekly on a Monday, a Wednesday and a Thursday, and it will work that out the dates. Problem was, if you look how dates are stored internally, Monday is not the first day of the week. And only when testing it, it gave me the wrong date, but it looked perfect. As I say, be prepared to restart the same question from a different angle. What was asked by Greg, I think. Sorry? Glenn, sorry.
No, that,
Is missing.
yeah, because that's been an issue with just a standard browser, just a standard,
Yeah,
search.
Yeah, sure.
you know, if you don't ask it what it thinks is the right way,
Yeah,
you don't get
yeah.
the answer you expect.
Yeah. If you ask chicken and egg, and you say Amazon, he said order both, and then you know which comes first. No, but seriously, it's a problem. I mean, we've all used search engines, and if you say, as I say, chicken, egg, it gives you this answer. If you say egg, chicken, it gives you a different one. And you can't always say what's going to be coming out of it. So the same, be prepared to restart, use a slightly different format for your question, and you might get a better answer. So, my next project with ChatGPT. I don't know if anyone knows password safe. Anyone use password safe? Well, somebody's nodding.
Have used in the past.
Yeah, okay. It's quite a nice manager for passwords. It's available on Windows and Linux, but not OS 2. So I thought, maybe I can port it, because it's open source. So I think I'll ask ChatGPT, can we possibly do this? This is its answer. A legitimate password-safe compatibility application for OS 2 on Arca OS, it knows I'm using Arca, is a very achievable project if you focus on compatibility with psafe 3, that's a particular version of password safe, for native PM GUI, modern crypto, modern architecture, and this is the architecture he recommends. This I get back from ChatGPT. Looks quite good. You can't read it from there, but that's safer for me. And it says the tool chain. So it's giving me the basics to do this. I'm going to try that as soon as I get a chance. I just have to finish my current project. And who knows, if that works, look at some other things to port to OS 2. If you guys have some projects you would like ported from Windows to OS 2 that's open source, let me know, we can try it. And don't say a web browser. So, if you see on Hobus password safe for OS 2 in the next few months, you know I've been successful. Conclusion. I think ChatGPT can be very useful. It can help you with coding. I'm only interested in coding with this respect. It's not the be-all and end-all, but it is a powerful tool. It can help with all sorts of porting and programming, and maybe it might help with our web browser. But you heard Dimitri has already been using it.
Does it mean that there's just a steep learning curve, or is it
Also speeding up your coding.
It's speeding up, basically. There are two things. The first, my typing is not fantastic. My spelling is even worse. So when you're typing in code, it takes some time. You make simple mistakes. You've made a particular variable f find, and you used a capital F the first time round, and the next time you use a lowercase f. So it helps in that simple thing. It also helps from how do you do something. For example, I wanted to know how can I generate a window from a program that's running in the background. Not too difficult. It gave me the answer straight away. There was a small problem. If you tried to close that, you ended up with a zombie process. And he told me how to fix that. And that was done quite quickly. So in that respect, it is very, very easy. The problem comes when you get a solution that doesn't work and you're going back and forth. Debugging because it wasn't correct. But otherwise, the debugging can be quite quick. I mean, I have the code already typed in. You know, I mean, how quick can you type in 20 lines of code without typing errors? This is the other problem. So it helps. But as I say, sometimes you have a feeling you're going round in circles, and I've had a situation where the first solution, after about 6, comes back again as the solution, which we decided in our discussion, that doesn't work. So, I mean, you have to take the plus and the minus. But I think, in principle, very good. Any questions? Any one of my options in ChatGPT? I can sell some. No, but seriously, try it. Also, I asked about Warp-In because I thought, well, the current program I'm working on, it needs to have a Warp-In file. And I've done that before, but if this can do it for me, why not? It saves me time, and it's probably better than if I try to do it again and again. Questions? No, that's Greg. Sorry. Who's Mike? Greg.
Have you tried running ChatGPT in Double?
I haven't. I was going to try that, but as I said, or maybe I didn't say, running VirtualBox on this machine, and I could show you that. I started ChatGPT and it works.
But on what OS in the virtual machine?
On the OS2. So it looks like the interface from VirtualBox out to Internet. So it looks like. But ChatGPT under OS2 in VirtualBox worked. I haven't tried Double. I want to. Has anybody got Double on their machine? Can you try ChatGPT when you have time, just to see what happens? Yeah.
Or you can try installing yourself the working package for making Google 6.2. It's a one-click installation.
No, didn't work. It's gone. It's like everything. Of course, you can do this, you can do that. I don't know how much time you guys always have. My time always seems to be running out. Since the beginning of this year, I have a young kitten, which takes more of my time. Well, that's life. It's a great kitten. It weighs 5 kilos now. It's only 6 months old. No, but seriously, you know, you never seem to have enough time to do everything. So I haven't tried everything. And my priority is to get the program I'm writing finished at the moment. Any other questions? Has anybody else used ChatGPT? Yes. And? Oh, no. Microphone. Mike. Give Mike the phone.
I've used ChatGPT, Copilot, and what was the other one? Gemini.
Claude.
Gemini,
yeah.
But not for really development purposes, but just asking general questions about Dutch tax law. And one of the things I like about at least Copilot is that in a lot of cases it automatically gives source references where it got the info from, and I'm not certain if ChatGPT does that these days. You can ask it for where did you get your info from.
That you can, but
sometimes you still get a really roundabout answer where it says, oh no, I have the info, but I don't know where it is, but my answer is correct. I got that to one of my questions about Dutch tax law. No, there's no reference source where you can find it, but so no, yeah, that's.
Well, as I say, the biggest problem with ChatGPT when you're talking with it, it gives the impression that you really know your stuff, which is of course correct, but at the same time, the answers that it gives are sometimes dubious. The biggest advantage you're asking for code, you can check it straight away, it doesn't work. I mean, if you ask about what is the brutto annual product in South Africa for gold, we don't know. It could be right, could be wrong. That's the difference. So using ChatGPT for coding is very exact. Either it works or it doesn't. The only problem which I've run across is maybe it works, but it doesn't do quite what you want. So you have to go and cross-check it. You have to debug the routine, which is not always difficult, but sometimes you don't see all of the result. It does give you, often as not, do you want error checking in this routine? Which sometimes you do, and sometimes because you've checked all the inputs before it gets to this routine, why double up? Yeah? Any more questions? No? Okay. Well, thank you, gentlemen.